So you talked about this strong taboo against writing about your wife's death, right? And then a little later, you qualified that by, or you clarified that by saying the taboo was...
Maybe I contradicted it.
Sorry?
Or I just contradicted it.
No, you said that the taboo came out of the sense that you were profiteering.
Yeah.
That you were profiteering. Okay. So, and then I understood then, okay, why you still wanted to work on it as a private thing. How did that taboo actually work, or getting over that taboo work when you actually did send it out for publishing? Like, did it feel even more like profiteering then when you were trying to get it published, or had it changed in its expression?
The only where Young Widower ends is where the process ended for me, which is, I think there's a lot of benefit in saying things that you haven't heard other people say about your experience. So, the book opens, I'm walking through Barnes & Noble, and I can find 6,000 books that have pictures of kittens and tell me about every step of grief as a journey, and we're always holding the hands of the people we love and all this crap. But I didn't find any book that was saying, I found a book, Judith Herman's Grief and Trauma. That described to me what was happening in my brain. But I didn't see anybody writing about, after Katie died, I felt straight up fine some days, and I couldn't get out of bed other days. And some days I just thought, I'll take the kids to get ice cream. And then other days I thought, I am a horrible person and I should have died, not Katie. And there was such an emphasis in all of these books I would read about grief, in narratives, a story. You have to have you have to show people how you overcame something. You have to follow Augustine's model and show how you were changed and transformed. And the image that was helpful to me was to think about, from the Bible, to think about Job's witness. God decides to test Job. Job is hanging out at dinner. 3 times a witness comes and says, your crops have been destroyed. Your grain stores that were going to make you a rich person have been destroyed. And all the people who were there died too. And I alone have escaped to tell thee. And then later it's, your animals have died, and everyone who was there died in this world, but I alone have escaped to tell thee. And then your family is dead, your whole family, your wife, everything, and I alone have escaped to tell thee, and I thought there's something about trying to be Job's witness, the witness to these things, and to tell people, I can tell you this is what I know happened because I was there, and because this is how I thought about it. And I took a little bit of comfort in kind of how I thought about the ethics of that. But I think I also just, I just felt like this is a part of what I've been trying to do in poetry, but I haven't been able to say it in poetry. But if I can share this in prose, why wouldn't it be part of the story? Why wouldn't I put that out there as part of it? And so it became less about profiteering. And I tell you right now, I'm happy to share my royalty statements with anyone on this call. I've not profited in any way from Memoir, but it became less about profiteering and more about, let me get the full picture out there. I've tried to let me get the whole feeling of guilt out there, and grief, and the ways in which we're not, what doesn't break us only makes us stronger. And that felt, that played to my Jesuit roots. I'm going to be the one who tells the truth. Gosh darn it. That kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Coming back to grief, though, I often hear when memoir is discussed, and actually the writing of memoir, when you hear memoir teachers talk about it, that they, you often hear the words like, how do you write this without increasing the trauma, right?
Right.
Do you think that that's possible, or do you think that you need to go in there and kind of like put your hands around the trauma and get bloody with it? It's like.
Yeah, I think that the example that I came up with, and I was very proud of myself about this, was when I was revising the book before I was just trying to revise it. Is someone said to me, well, gosh, how's your writing going? And I said, God, I'm trying to revise this freaking book and get it, I said, and they said, well, and I said, it sucks. It's horrible. Every time I revise this thing, I get a freaking migraine, or I end up having a panic attack, or I'm irritable, or I just start crying. And this is now 6 years. What am I doing? I'm freaking either a fool to keep doing this, or, and I said, it feels to me like Harry Potter's Horcruxes. Like there's a little piece of me that, is I'm putting into this book at great, great cost. And without a beat, the person said, yeah, but when you're finished, you can give that thing to everybody else and they will carry it for you. And I mean, I have to tell you, like, there is something truly magical. You do need to have the resources to feel safe when you write about difficult things, whether that's medication, whether that's therapy, whether that's just knowing you're loved and safe. You do need those things. I sincerely believe that Katie could only die one time. I mean, I just very early on said to myself, she can die one time and the feelings can be completely vivid and real, but it's not happening again. This is a memory. This is an echo. This is a repetition. This is a ritual. But you do reach a point in your life where once you've put it on the page, this is sort of, Annie Dillard said this about her memoir, In American Childhood. She said, once you put it on the page, it replaces the memory. And which is to say, once you put it on the page, you have changed it into something. And it can now go into the world. And it's as goofy as it sounds, your opinion about what happened to you or your feeling about it will change your whole life. But I always sort of tell my students, you will want to have a record that this was how you felt when you were X number of years old thinking about something. Mm-hmm. Even if all your conclusions are wrong, you will just take the memory and you'll put it into the sequence of all the other memories. It is good to get a snapshot of how you felt at a specific moment in time.
Mm-hmm. Now, about how you felt, this is a big turn here. Yeah, sure. But you mentioned a couple of times that you knew it was good, that you knew at least parts of it was good.
Yeah. And
I think that I speak for both memoirist and novelist in your audience. How did you know? Like how for you, how do you settle on that? Like, how do you fight the voice that says, oh, you're being over optimistic, you're being deluded, and how do you fight the voice that is just as uncooperative and says, oh, everything that you've done is a farce? I remember talking to Michael David Lucas once, and I said, well, the experience for me is that one moment as I'm finishing up the manuscript, one moment I'm imagining my acceptance speech for the Booker Prize, and the next moment I think, oh my God, what are you doing? You can't do this. So how did you settle in on that? This is good. There's enough good in here to drive me on.
I know when things are bad. The symptoms for me of when things are bad that I'm writing are that I'm certain the first time out they're brilliant, or I'm certain that formally I'm doing something just so innovative it's going to blow everybody's minds. When I was in Chicago as a 26-year-old 7th grade teacher with my friend Ben trying to make a writers group, we met 9 times, and the 9th time I brought in my poem, my trenchant critique of our Iraq war policy, right? Encoded in a poem about pop music being listened to at a baseball game where Elvis was watching the Cubs. I mean, Sharon, this was high level brilliance. I mean, I was trying to be John Ashbery, but like doing a really bad job of it. And no one got the analogy, and I was livid. I just thought, how could these Luddites, these morons, not see the brilliance of what I was doing, So on the one hand, you have to have a little bit of arrogance that what you're doing is good. But on the other hand, like sometimes you're trying so hard to do something, right? And you just know that effort, right? That amount of effort and that sense that you're trying so hard to do something might mean that there's an easier way to do it. And I think that with writing, anytime that you're trying to pause and explain, like, well, I'm going to explain to the reader this. Well, in chapter 3, this is going to be explained, which is going to make this, you know, you don't want to think that what you're doing is something that only graduate students are going to read, you know, in the world. You want there to be enough for it to sort of make sense immediately. So anyway, a long way of saying, anytime I think I'm doing something truly dynamic and original and innovative, it's usually bad. anytime I feel that in the real world as I'm writing, something like the emotion that I'm trying to get on the page is usually like a good sign for me. Mm-hmm. But I think, you know, Grace Paley has that quote that everybody quotes where she says, you know, you can't start editing a book until you finished writing it.
Right.
And I think that, you know, sometimes you just have to get the whole thing out and then kind of start thinking about the process of editing. But I think, you know, how I see it happening with me is I think how I teach it, which is that if you feel something happening while you're doing the writing, you know, pursue that feeling. If the feeling is not coming, no matter how confident you are in the subject matter, it's probably not happening on the page. So you have to go and start over. But that chapter I was telling you about, that became the start of Young Widower, the one about, you know, am I a fraud? Am I writing elegies, or am I just a big phony profiteering off of the memory of my wife's death? I mean, that had an opening scene where I'm walking to the Blockbuster Video to find a TV show, and I freak out because they've been missing the one season I need to watch for 3 weeks in a row. And then I go home and I fall apart, and I'm listening to Katie's favorite country western songs. You know, in the version that, if you've seen the book, you know that where that goes next is I'm tutoring this woman who says, "You're what? What happened to you? How have we known each other 3 months and I didn't know this had happened to you?" Where it went in the first draft was Garth Brooks, Blockbuster, I am sad. It then went to the history of elegy in literature is quite a complicated one. The elegy first began in classical antiquity with the I mean, it was just, you know, so, and it was like when I read that draft, it was like, what are you doing? You're trying to explain to people how smart you are about elegy? Like, that's stupid. Don't do that. Just go back to the Garth Brooks, go back to the feeling, go back to the, so, you know, it's an intuitive recognition, but do you feel this way? Maybe I'm crazy. I think we kind of know when we're trying to get away with something. I think we know when we're trying to trick somebody, but I think we also kind of know when something is good. But we get in trouble when we lie to ourselves to say, like, well, this will be good. I just have to make it better, you know. And you kind of have to say, like, it's true, you might, but you know, pages 3 to 7 are very good, and page 1 is very good. So what are you doing on page 2, John?